Here is something strange about you. You are watching a game. You have no idea who either team is. You have never met a single player. You have no money on the line. And then someone tells you, one team has won 17 championships. The other team has never won once. And instantly, without thinking, without choosing, you pick a side. You want the little team to win. Why does that happen? Why do you feel it so physically, almost like a pull in your chest? The answer reaches all the way into how your brain was built, and once you understand it, you will never watch a competition the same way again. Let's start with a number. In a landmark 2010 study, psychologist Joseph Vandello at the University of South Florida showed people a fictional basketball game between two teams. One team was described as dominant and favored. The other was struggling, way behind. Viewers who were told nothing except those facts rooted for the underdog team by a margin of more than 2-1. No storyline, no star player, just the information that one side was losing. That was enough. That single fact flipped something inside people. And here is the first clue. The flip happened before people had time to reason about it. That matters, because it tells us this is not a conscious choice. It is a reflex. Psychologists call it the underdog effect, and it shows up across cultures, across ages, and even across species barriers. When researchers Joseph Vandello, Nadav Goldschmied, and David Richards ran another version of the study in 2007 and published it in the Journal of Social Psychology, they found that the underdog preference held even when subjects were told the favoured team was made up of nicer, more likable people. Still did not matter. The scoreboard asymmetry alone drove the rooting interest. Your brain smells unfairness and reacts before your thinking brain has even woken up. This is the fairness instinct. Humans come loaded with it from an early age. Researchers at Yale's infant cognition lab, led by psychologist Wynn, showed in a famous 2007 study that babies as young as 6 months old prefer a puppet that helps another puppet over one that hurts it. 6 months old. Not old enough to talk, not old enough to walk, but already old enough to want the weaker one to get a fair shot. The fairness instinct is not something you learned in school. It is something older than language, built into your social brain, because for most of human history, living in groups that cooperated and balanced power meant surviving. But wait, fairness alone does not explain everything, because sometimes you do not just want the underdog to win fairly, you want them to win dramatically, impossibly. You want them to pull off something that should not work. Why? Keep that feeling in mind, because it explains the second engine driving the underdog effect. Identification. When you watch someone fight against the odds, your brain does something quietly remarkable. It maps their struggle onto struggles you already carry. Neuroscientists call the brain circuits involved in this process the default mode network, and research published in 2013 by Yuri Hassan's lab at Princeton University showed that when people listen to a compelling narrative, their brain activity synchronizes with the storytellers. You literally start sharing the mental experience. So when you see an underdog grind through something hard, your brain is not just observing. It is running the simulation. It is borrowing their fight and feeling it as your own. And here is what makes this wild. You do not even need the underdog to be a person. A 1944 experiment by Fritz, Heider and Marianne Simmel at Smith College showed participants a short film of simple geometric shapes, a big triangle, a small triangle, and a circle moving around a box. Participants automatically narrated the big triangle as a bully and the small shapes as victims trying to escape. Geometric shapes. And people were rooting for the little ones within seconds. The underdog story is so fundamental to your brain that you project it onto triangles. Now here is where it escalates into something even stranger about you specifically. Research by Scott Allison and George Guthels, who literally wrote the book on this, their 2011 work, Heroes, What They Do and Why We Need Them from Oxford University Press, found that underdog stories do not just entertain us, they function like fuel. People who were reminded of an underdog they once rooted for showed measurably higher persistence on difficult tasks afterward. The underdog story changes your behavior. It convinces some part of you that the impossible gap can be closed, because you have seen it closed, or at least you have felt it close, even in fiction. Think about the 1980 US Olympic hockey team. 22 college kids and minor leaguers against the Soviet squad that had beaten the National Hockey League All-Stars just 10 days earlier. On February 23, 1980, in Lake Placid, New York, those 22 kids won 4-3. Sports Illustrated later called it the greatest sports moment of the 20th century. Millions of Americans who had no particular interest in hockey were weeping in front of their televisions. Not because they knew the players, because the gap was so enormous and then it closed. So here is your payoff. That pull you feel in your chest when the little team lines up against the giant. It is not weakness. It is not irrational. It is one of the oldest and most sophisticated tools your brain owns. It is your fairness instinct, inherited from ancestors who survived by keeping power balanced in small groups. It is your identification reflex, your brain rehearsing resilience through someone else's story. And it is your built-in hope circuit, the part of you that genuinely needs to believe the gap can close, because someday the underdog in the story might be you. You were rooting for the little guy long before you ever watched a game. You were doing it at 6 months old. You were built for it. If that just explains something you have felt your whole life, hit like and subscribe, because we make videos about exactly this. Why you feel what you feel, and why the answers are always more fascinating than you expected.